The night I met Elena started with a rejection I saw coming and still felt like a punch. The restaurant was the kind of place my crew jokes about when we drive past it. Polished dark wood, soft yellow lights, quiet music. Even the menus felt heavy, like they wanted you to know the prices were a warning. I sat alone at a small table by the window with a single red rose in a glass vase. It looked like something from a movie, not from my life. My hands did not belong on that table. They were work hands, with small scars and old cuts. My gray t-shirt did not belong there either, but it was clean, and I had tried. I had shaved. I had even checked my hair 3 times in the truck mirror before walking in. My blind date showed up 10 minutes late. She walked in like she already wanted to be somewhere else. She glanced at the rose like it might be a joke, then looked at me. "You're Caleb?" she asked, but it sounded like she hoped I would say no. "Yes," I said. Her eyes moved over me. Shirt. Forearms. The scar line near my wrist from a saw that kicked years ago. I watched her decision form on her face, step by step, like a crack running through glass. "You look different from your photos," she said, voice tight but polite. "They're recent," I said, "just not from a job site." She slid her phone onto the table, already half standing. "I'm going to be honest," she said. "I don't think this is a match." I did not argue. I did not ask for another chance. My jaw locked. I gave one short nod, the kind you give when you know the game is over. "Understood," I said. She left the rose where it was. She walked out without looking back. For a moment, I stayed there, shoulders squared, staring at my glass of water like it was laughing at me. The room felt too polished, too bright. I told myself it did not matter, that I had work in the morning, that this was why I did not do blind dates. I reached for my jacket, fingers already inside one sleeve, ready to walk out and forget the whole night. That is when I felt someone stop at my table. A shadow fell across the rows. "Is this seat taken?" a woman asked. I turned. She was not my date. She looked like she belonged in this place, and in every place more expensive than this one. Champagne satin dress, neat hair, straight posture, calm, controlled. Not soft, not trying to seem sweet, just certain. She stood, with one hand on the back of the empty chair and the other holding a small card. "It's open," I said. She did not sit yet. She looked at the rose, then at my face. The corner of her mouth lifted in a faint, amused curve. It did not reach arrogance. "I watched that," she said. "And I hate wasting good tables." I almost told her to walk away. My hand tightened on my jacket. Shame burned hot under my skin. I shifted in my seat, like I could stand up fast enough to erase the last 5 minutes. Then I really saw the card in her hand. She held it out, leaning forward a little, the way you do when you are offering something you will not repeat. On it, in neat handwriting, were 2 words. "Start over." "I'm Elena Vance," she said, "and I'm not here to rescue you." "I didn't ask to be rescued," I said. "I know," she replied. She said it like that was exactly why she was there. "I'm here to ask you something." She finally sat and set the card on the table between us like a contract and a dare at the same time. "Can you start over with me?" she asked. I should have said no, not because I wanted to hurt her, because my instincts told me this was above my pay grade. Men like me do not get mysterious offers from women in satin dresses who sit down at rejected tables. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why?" Elena did not flinch. "Because I need someone who is not afraid to say no to me," she said. "And because I can tell you are not the type to beg for approval." Those words hit me deeper than any compliment. I did not know if she meant it as praise or as a warning, but I could feel her watching my reaction like it was part of an interview. "What do you need?" I asked. She slid her phone toward me. The screen was dark. No photos, no flirting. Just her calendar open to one block of time with a title. Vance Heritage Emergency. "My family's building is falling apart," she said. It is scheduled to host the town's winter gala in 6 weeks. The foundation is compromised, the permit office is stalling, and the contractor I used to trust is trying to take it back." "Used to trust?" I asked. Elena's eyes held mine. "Marcus Empire," she said. "He wants leverage. I will not give it." The name sounded like someone who enjoyed hearing it from other people's mouths. "And where do I come in?" I asked. She tapped the start over card with one finger. "I need you to evaluate the building," she said. "I will pay your rate. If you say it is not salvageable, I walk away and take the hit. If you say it can be saved, I need you to do the work." I leaned back and let the math run in my head. 6 weeks. Historic structure, stalled permits, a hostile contractor with a grudge. "You do not even know if I am licensed for that scope," I said. "You are," she replied. I checked. Of course she had. I looked at the rose again. My blind date had left it like I was beneath it. Elena had noticed it and still sat down. She respected the effort, or at least did not treat it like a joke. "Fine," I said at last. "I'll look at your building." "That's all you're getting tonight." Elena's smile was quick and sharp. "Good," she said. "I don't want a performance. I want a result." The Vance Heritage Building sat at the edge of downtown like a stubborn old man refusing to retire. Brick front, tall windows, ornate trim that used to mean something when people built things to last. Donors liked to point at it in speeches. Inside, the truth hit fast. The cold first, then the smell. Rot has its own scent. Not dramatic, just damp wood and time. The air carried it in thin layers, stronger near the stairwell where the boards felt soft under my boots. Elena followed me in. Her heels clicked once on the old floor, then went quiet. She looked around the empty hall like it was a friend she had let down. "I keep thinking if I push hard enough it'll hold," she said. I crouched and pressed my thumb into a beam where the paint had bubbled. The wood gave too easily. My stomach tightened. "Come on," I said. Basement. Quote, "We went to the hatch everyone avoids. The metal latch was cold enough to bite my fingers. When I pulled, it groaned and gave way. A puff of air came up from below, wet and stale, full of that rot smell that clings to your clothes. My flashlight cut through dust and cobwebs. The bottom of the stairs was slick in places, not with standing water, but with old moisture that never fully dried. I tapped a support post with my knuckles. The sound was wrong. Hollow where it should have been solid. Elena stayed at the top step, one hand tight on the rail. "You don't have to come down," I said. "I do," she answered, and she took the first step anyway. That said more about her than any speech. I handed her my moisture meter, an ugly little tool that never lies. "Press it to the beam." I told her. She did. The numbers jumped higher than they should in a healthy structure. She stared at the display like it was proof that she had not been crazy all this time. "So it isn't in my head," she said. "It's in the wood," I said. I traced the damage for her, up the wall, across the sill plate, into a corner that had been painted over again and again to hide the soft spots. I did not try to make it sound better. I laid it out like a map. Back upstairs, dust brushed the hem of her dress and she did not care. Her breathing was fast, but her eyes were clear now. Fear had turned into something sharper. "It's not holding," I said. "It's pretending." She swallowed. "Can you fix it?" Quote, "This will take real work," I said. "Real permits, real inspections. If anyone tells you they can do it in a week, they are lying, or they plan to cheat." She lifted her chin. "Then we do it right," she said. That was the first real choice she made in front of me, and the first moment I felt something shift, not in the building, but between us. We signed the contract at a wobbly folding table by the front windows. Outside, people walked past without caring that a whole building was sitting on bad bones. I spread my papers out, pen in hand. Elena sat across from me, blazer on, hair pulled back, focus sharp. She read fast, but her foot tapped under the table, a small, nervous beat she probably thought I could not see. "This section," she said, pointing, "you wrote that you can walk away." "Yeah," I said. "If anything feels off, you tell me and I stop." If anyone tries to make this personal to get a better outcome, you tell me and I handle it, or I am out. I am here to work, not to be owned." Her foot stopped tapping. She studied my face for a second. "Fair," she said and signed. "No games, no drama, just ink." For the next 3 weeks, it was work in the purest form. Dust, measurements, calls, delays. The kind of days that leave your back tight and your fingers sore. I started before sunrise most mornings. Old buildings tell the truth when it is cold. The wood shrinks, gaps show, cracks speak louder. Elena began showing up about 15 minutes after me. Coat over simple clothes, hair tied back, coffee in one hand, and a folder of vendor quotes in the other. She did not hover. She did not try to tell me how to do my job. She stayed close enough to learn, and far enough to stay safe. She watched how we set temporary supports. She listened when I talked to the crew. She asked questions that mattered and skipped the ones that wasted time. One morning I came in from hauling lumber and found her sitting on an upside-down paint bucket in the corner we used as a temporary office. Her laptop was open on a crate in front of her. Her fingers were stiff on the keys. A cheap little space heater sat by her boots. It was plugged in, lights on, but no warmth came out. "That thing working?" I asked. "Not really," she said. Her voice sounded tired and flat. "It was the fastest one I could get." I unplugged it and pulled off the back panel. The wiring was burned. The fuse was gone. Somebody had sold her trash. "This is a fire hazard," I said. "I just needed heat," she said softly. "I am here late most nights. Fast does not matter if it burns your building down." I walked out to my truck and came back with a new heater still in the box. I kept one for emergency jobs. Good shutoff, heavy cord, safe build. I set it up, taped the cord down along the floor, and tested it until warm air flowed steady. Elena held her hands out toward the heat, palms open, shoulders slowly loosening. She looked like someone who was not used to letting herself relax. "You keep emergency supplies in your truck?" she asked. "I keep solutions," I said. "It sounds less romantic." Her mouth twitched. "Good," she said. "I am allergic to romance." "Lucky," I answered. "So am I." But the way she watched me as the room warmed up did not feel allergic at all. By the end of that week, the building had a new rhythm. We set temporary columns under the worst sagging span. I sistered a weak joist with new lumber, bolted it tight against the old beam so the load had someplace honest to go. My crew worked steady, no shortcuts. Elena watched every step from a safe distance. She was not helpless. She was learning when to let a professional take the risk. That is a different kind of strength. When the inspector finally showed up, he walked in like old buildings annoyed him. He looked at me like I was just another contractor trying to rush a job. Elena took a breath like she was about to jump in, to argue or defend. I lifted a hand slightly. She stopped. I did not go at the inspector with attitude. I walked him through my safety log. I showed him the shoring, the rot path, the moisture readings from the basement. I pointed out every fix, every brace, every temp support. He checked my fasteners himself, pulled on them, hit a beam with his knuckles. Then he made a note on his clipboard. "Good," he said, like the word cost him. After he left, Elena stood in the doorway where the warm air from the heater met the cold air from outside. "I did not even have to argue," she said quietly. "You hired the right kind of stubborn," I replied. She looked at my hands, then at the reinforced beam. "I am starting to believe that," she said. Days blurred into sawdust and metal, calls with suppliers, weather checks, long hours under old ceilings. One night, after we had cut out another section of rotten framing, I found her on the staircase landing. She was sitting sideways on the step, heels off, bare feet tucked under her dress like she had forgotten to be the polished version of herself. A pizza box sat open between us on the step above. "I ordered it," I said, surprised. "You said you would be here until midnight," she answered. People who work until midnight usually eat something dumb. I sat one step below her, leaving a safe distance. The building smelled like old wood and new lumber at the same time. The air was cold by the windows and warmer near the center where the heater hummed. Elena took a bite of pizza and chewed slowly like she was not sure what to do with something so simple. "This is ridiculous," she said. But she took another bite. "You have never eaten pizza on a staircase?" I asked. "Not in a building that costs more than my car," she said. "I have eaten it on worse stairs," I told her. "These are nice compared to some job sites." She let out a short laugh, quick and unguarded, then looked away like I had just seen something too private. I did not push. I did not ask about her father or her past or why this building mattered so much. I just stayed. Fixed what I could fix. Kept my word. That is when the first sabotage showed up. It did not come with big drama. It came as a faint smell under the usual mix of dust and wood. Warm plastic. Electrical heat where there should not be any. I tracked it to a temporary panel near the old stage. Behind it, someone had spliced a wire that was not part of my plan. Insulation stripped. Line rerouted in a way that would overload if the system took pressure. Elena was behind me when I killed the power and pulled the panel off. She did not scream. She went very still. "Is this an accident?" she asked. I held up the cleanly cut wire ends. "Accidents do not look like this," I said. Her hand reached toward the back exit door, like her body wanted to run before her brain even finished the thought. Then she stopped. Her fingers slowly loosened on the handle and fell back to her side. She took one long, controlled breath. "Marcus," she said. It was not a question. "Marcus." I agreed. She turned her head toward me. "What do we do?" she asked. "We document," I said. "Then we make it impossible for him to lie." I thought about the night at the restaurant, the rose, the start-over card, the way she had asked if I could begin again with her. I did not say any of that. I just opened my notebook, wrote down the time and what we found, and took photos of every cut wire and every splice. I had not planned on this turning into a fight, but I knew how to fight in the one way that mattered. You do the work right. You keep records. You stand your ground. And as I watched Elena stand there with her hand off the door and her eyes on me instead of the exit, I realized something dangerous. I did not just want to save her building. I wanted to be the one she trusted when everything around her tried to fall apart. 2 days after we found the spliced wire, I had to leave the site early. There were files I needed from the clerk's office. Old permits, old inspection reports, the kind of paper trail that keeps people honest when they decide to lie. The town hall smelled like dust and toner. The clerk moved slowly, but the stamps were clear and the dates mattered. I slid certified copies into a folder and headed back to the truck. By the time I drove toward the Vance building, the sun was gone. Streetlights painted the sidewalk in long yellow bands. The building stood dark against the sky, windows blank, like it was holding its breath again. I parked a block away and walked the last stretch. Habit. I did not want to announce my arrival every time if someone was watching. At the side gate, something metal caught my eye. A pair of bolt cutters lay half hidden near the fence, tossed low in the weeds like someone had dropped them fast. Fresh scratches glinted on the jaws. My crew had no reason to be using bolt cutters on that gate. We had keys, we had locks I had installed myself. I stepped back into the shadow of a parked truck and stayed still. My hands slid into my jacket pockets. My eyes adjusted to the dim light. Near the dumpster at the end of the alley, a man leaned against the wall with his phone pressed to his ear. Marcus's foreman. I had seen him on other jobs around town. Thick shoulders, quick smile that never reached his eyes. He did not know I was there. "Do it tonight," he said into the phone. "No delays. We make it look like their crew did it and we're back in." He ended the call, shoved his phone in his pocket, and walked away like the alley belonged to him. I did not move until he turned the corner and vanished. My heart was steady. I had worked around men like him before. They counted on fear and confusion. I looked down at the bolt cutters again. This was not a guess now. It was a pattern. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and pulled out my notebook. I wrote the time, the location, the name of the foreman, and his exact words. Then I went home, took my binder off the shelf, and added fresh pages for what I knew was coming. That night, I drove back to the Vance building before midnight with my truck parked out of sight. I did not come back to be a hero. I came back to catch the truth. Inside, I killed the main lights and waited in the side hallway where I could see the entry without being seen. Phone in my hand, recording ready. It did not take long. The side gate rattled, metal on metal. A flashlight beam cut through the dark outside. The foreman stepped in, carrying the bolt cutters like they were just another tool. He moved like a man who had done this before, straight to the service door. No hesitation. I stepped out of the shadow and hit my flashlight. The beam went straight into his face. "Drop it," I said. He flinched, stumbling back a step. When his vision cleared and he recognized me, his expression twisted. "Wrong night," I added, voice calm. "The sheriff is already interested in your schedule." He made his decision. He threw the cutters at my feet and ran. I did not chase him. This was not a movie. I did not need to corner him in a dark alley. I needed proof. I picked up the cutters with a clean rag and set them on a piece of plastic sheeting so they could be bagged without contamination. Then I called the sheriff and waited near the front door. Elena arrived before the sheriff's car. Her coat was thrown over her shoulders. Her hair was loose, like she had grabbed her keys and left without thinking. She came up the steps fast, eyes wide but not wild. She looked at me first, then at the bolt cutters on the plastic, then at the closed door. "What happened?" she asked. "Your old contractor sent his man back," I said. "He wanted a reason to save the job." She walked over to the cutters. Her hand went to the door handle again, the same old habit. Grip tight, fingers ready to pull and run. Then she stopped. She looked at the cutters, then at me. Her fingers slowly uncurled from the handle and fell open at her side. "You were right," she said quietly. "I usually am about rot," I said, her mouth almost curved. Almost. The sheriff arrived with a deputy. They took photos, bagged the cutters, and listened while I explained what I had recorded and what I had seen. I handed over my notes and the audio. No drama, just facts. Elena stood beside me the whole time. She did not interrupt. She did not spin the story. She let the truth speak. When they left, the building felt different. Not safer yet, but cleaner in a way. The lies were no longer secret. The next morning, I found muddy footprints near the rear service door. Wrong tread, wrong size, not from my crew. I photographed each print, measured the spacing, wrote it all down. Then I changed the locks, added a motion sensor inside, and set 2 small cameras where no one would expect them. Elena watched me from the hallway. "Do you ever get surprised?" she asked. "Not by men like Marcus," I said. "They do not stop because you tell them you are tired. They stop when it costs them more to push than to walk away." She held on to that like it was a new language. In the days that followed, while the sheriff started asking quiet questions around town, I handled the other front of the fight. Permits. The permit office had been stalling her for weeks with the same line. 6 to 8 weeks. The clerk said again when we walked in. He barely looked up from his screen. I set my binder on the counter and opened it. Tabs stuck out in neat rows. Photos. Moisture readings. Inspector notes. Copies of every permit and report I had pulled. "This structure has active rot and an event deadline," I said. "We have an engineer's letter, a safety log, and documented hazards. The inspector can stamp expedited. The form is right here." I slid the form across the counter. The clerk's posture changed. His eyes dropped to the binder. He started reading instead of brushing us off. He flipped through the pages, slowed down at the stamped documents, and bit the inside of his cheek like he did not want to admit we had done the work he hoped we had skipped. He picked up the phone and called the inspector while I stood there with my hands on the counter, saying nothing. Elena stood beside me, quiet, watching the way the paper carried more weight than any raised voice. When we walked back to the car, she looked at me like she was trying to line up this version of me with the man in the gray t-shirt at that first restaurant table. "You did not raise your voice once," she said. "Yelling does not fix beams," I replied. Or Clerks, quote, Her lips pressed together, then relaxed. She nodded slowly, like that answer was something she wanted to keep. 2 days later, the town council hearing took over the community hall. Folding chairs, bad coffee, people who liked microphones more than hard work. Marcus showed up in a dark suit with a lawyer at his side and a smooth smile on his face. He carried a thin complaint packet like it was already a win. Elena sat 1 row ahead of me in a dark blazer, spine straight, hands clasped in her lap. To anyone else she looked calm. I could see the white tension in her knuckles. When they called on him, Marcus stood. My company is concerned for public safety, he said. We have reason to believe the current renovation has involved unlicensed labor and unsafe practices. His lawyer placed the complaint packet on the table in front of the council like he was laying down a knife. When it was my turn, I walked to the table and set my binder down. The sound was not loud, but the room went quiet anyway. Certified copies, I said. Historical permits, prior inspections, and documentation of every change made on site, all with dates and signatures. The council chair flipped through the pages. His eyebrows climbed at the stamps. The clerk leaned in. Marcus's lawyer frowned and pulled the complaint closer to compare dates. Your complaint says the work began before authorization, I said, pointing to the line. These records show the permit date and inspection log. His timestamp does not match the town's. The lawyer opened his mouth, then shut it. The math was simple. The paper did not care about his tone. And there is more, I added calmly. Unauthorized spliced wiring, evidence of tampering, a foreman on site after hours with bolt cutters. Recorded. Behind me, I felt Elena stand up. Caleb is the reason this building is still standing, she said, voice steady. He is also the only person here who has documented every step because he builds like someone will try to accuse him later. That broke the last bit of polish off Marcus's smile. The council chair looked at him, then at the sheriff, who was leaning against the back wall like he had been waiting for this moment. Mr. Empire, your complaint is denied, the chair said, and I believe the sheriff would like a word with you outside. As the sheriff walked toward Marcus, the room buzzed. Papers shifted, people whispered. I closed my binder. I was not thinking about the first blind date anymore, or the rose, or the moment my night had collapsed. I was thinking about the woman in the row ahead of me, who had stopped reaching for door handles and started reaching for proof instead, and about the way she had once slid a small card across a table and asked me a question I still had not answered out loud. Can you start over with me? The week after the council meeting felt different. People still argued in emails. Deliveries still came late. The inspector still liked to frown at my work before nodding. But the fight had changed. Marcus was busy explaining himself to the sheriff. The permit office stopped stalling. The building was finally allowed to heal. I went back to doing what I knew best. Fix what is broken. Prove it is fixed. Write it down. We replaced a loose handrail that had been ignored for years. I tightened every bracket on the stage stairs, then walked up and down them until they felt like they could hold a crowd. I checked the exit doors 3 times. They opened smooth and fast. No sticking, no tricks. Elena was there for every check, not to breathe down my neck. To see the building change from a threat to something predictable. She learned where the cold drafts used to slide in and where I had sealed them. She walked the hall, closed her eyes, and listened to the way the floor sounded under her heels. Solid now. Honest. Each time I crossed another problem off my list, I saw something in her loosen. Her shoulders dropped a little, her jaw unclenched. She stopped staring at every doorway, like something was waiting behind it. One night, I was tightening the last bracket under a window frame. The hall was quiet except for my ratchet and the low hum of the heater. The air smelled like new paint and clean wood instead of damp rot. You are still here, Elena said. I looked over my shoulder. She stood a few feet away, shoes in her hand, bare feet on the new finished floor. Her hair was down for once. No blazer, just a simple sweater and a tired, soft look on her face. Last 10% is where people get careless, I said. I do not like watching buildings fall down on the finish line. She walked closer, stopping at arm's length. Her eyes flicked to the tool in my hand, then to the bracket I had just tightened. My father used to say that, she murmured. I did not ask. I just nodded. Some stories people give you, some stories you let them keep. She took a slow breath. Are you coming tomorrow? She asked. To the gala. I am not a donor, I said. I am the guy who crawled through your basement and cursed at wet wood. You are the reason the donors have a building to walk into, she said. I am not asking you to play a role, I am asking you to stand beside what you built. That landed deeper than any thank you. It sounded like respect, plain and clean. I will be there, I said. Her mouth softened. She nodded once, like this was another decision she could finally trust. For once, she did not look toward a door. She just turned, walked down the hall, and left knowing the building would hold. The night of the Winter Gala, the Vance Heritage Building finally looked like it had always wanted to look. Warm light filled the hall, bouncing off the restored trim and polished floors. The old smell of damp wood was gone. In its place was citrus from the caterers and the faint scent of fresh varnish. The walls did not groan. The stairs did not creak. Everything stood steady. I wore a rented black tuxedo. The collar felt strange on my neck, and the shoes were too stiff, but nobody stared. Men in suits and women in dresses filled the room, talking, laughing, posing for photos. Elena moved through the crowd like she had been born to do it. Dark dress that matched the room. Calm, smile, strong posture. Council members, donors, staff, all of them moved around her like planets around a sun. But she did not look like she was carrying the building alone anymore. For a while, I stayed near the back with a short glass of scotch in my hand. I watched her handle people who spoke in circles. When someone tried to claim the credit like they had saved her project, she redirected the praise without raising her voice. Caleb's team, I heard her say more than once. We did it right because he did not allow shortcuts. I was not used to hearing my name in rooms like this. I did not move forward. I was content to stand near a column and let the building speak for me. Then she broke away from a knot of donors and walked straight toward me. She did not rush. She did not hesitate. Her eyes stayed on mine the whole way. When she reached me, she did not touch my lapel or fuss with my tie like a scene from a movie. She simply slid her hand into mine, fingers steady and warm. Come with me, she said. Where? I asked. To a quieter corner, she said. I have talked to everyone I need to talk to tonight. Her hand stayed in mine as she led me toward a tall window at the side of the hall. Outside, the town lights blurred in the glass. Inside, the building gave off a steady heat, like it was proud of itself. We stopped where the noise of the party dropped into a soft hum. She did not let go of my hand. You did not leave, she said. I told you, I answered, leaning in just enough so only she could hear. If you tell me to stop, I stop. If you tell me to stay, I stay. But you do not get to pretend you have no say. Her eyes warmed, not glossy, not trembling, just steady. I want you to stay, she said. Simple words, clear, heavy. That was the answer I had been waiting for since she slid that small card across a table and asked if I could start over with her, not just with the building. With her. I set my free hand at her waist, firm and careful, giving her room to step back if she wanted to. She did not. She stepped closer, closing the last inch of space between us. The music from the other side of the hall washed around us, faint and distant. For once, there was no rot to point out, no document to sign, no threat to track. Just a woman who had stopped reaching for exit doors and a man who had stopped expecting to be the one left behind. I lowered my head and kissed her. It was not fast. It was not for show. It was slow enough to be deliberate, clean enough to be safe, strong enough that the rest of the room blurred out, and the only thing that felt real was the way her fingers tightened around mine and then relaxed. When we broke apart, her forehead rested lightly against mine for a second. Her other hand, the one that used to hover near door handles, hung open and loose at her side. She looked up at me. Start over, she whispered. Her voice was softer than I had ever heard it, but the words carried weight. The same 2 words that had been written on that card beside a red rose and a glass of water in a restaurant where I had been left alone. Back then, start over had sounded like a strange offer I did not trust. Now, in a building we had saved together, it sounded like a life I was allowed to choose. I did not answer with a long speech or some perfect line. I answered the way I always do. I stayed.